You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, June 9th. Apologies for not doing a show on Friday. It's been a whole week since the last show. Was feeling a little under the weather, so not fun. I'm still coming down from it now, but I feel and sound better, and I could probably talk for a full hour. So good news for all. But joining me as always on a Monday, Weston, how you doing?
Lucky me, I got a super energized, ready to go Steph who's on the mend. So I'm looking forward to everything we throw your way this evening. And of course, I have to do my hello to my son so I don't get a beat down when I go downstairs. So hello, Landon.
Hey, Landon. Thanks for joining. Thanks for everyone tuning in on a Monday evening here or Monday afternoon, depending where you're at. We're going to start off the show with a topic of we generally do start with a topic, Weston, but Jair Alexander Packers Corner was released by the team this morning. And so this kind of just, as you would expect, spurred the question amongst 49er fans. Well, should the 49ers be interested in Jair Alexander? And first, Weston, before I give my thoughts, I'm curious to know what you think about this.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Anytime a notable name becomes available, it's just the constant debate of, are we in? Are we out? I'll say this. For given his age, his consistent play when he is on the field, I'm not disinterested in Jair Alexander. I just think you tread carefully. Like with a player like this, who is a high-profile name, right? We know he's got a ton of personality that comes with him. Very media-focused, in my opinion, as well. Like you want to check all your boxes and make sure that this guy, forget the contract stuff. Does he fit your locker room? Does he fit what you're trying to accomplish? Think of everything that the 49ers have been about so far, for the most part, this offseason, about everybody being here, everybody being on the same page, and like total focus on ball and not going back to what 2024 looked like and moving forward. And you have a refreshed roster as well. Does he fit that?
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know if they're in the market to go out there and say that I'm going to spend $15-16 million a year on this guy if I don't know he skill-wise he fits, but you see it on the graphic on your screen. Hasn't played a lot of football in the last 2 years since signing that big contract. So yes, we know like the big contracts can be the kiss of death sometimes, right? So maybe a fresh start is good for him. I'll short answer this. I am very interested in the player, but I need to know that he's going to come in and be on board with what we have going. And if not, then you just move on. You move on that quickly and you go no further. But I am interested in the player, and I do think he fits a need, and I do think he's on the right side of 30 with a lot of football left ahead of him.
Yeah, he's only 28 years old, so he's not quite like super old where you're like, no, he doesn't exactly fit the age range that the 49ers are now looking for with this retooling. But you mentioned it, like the injury concern and all the time that he's missed, definitely a concern. 20 games missed over the last 2 seasons. This past year, played only 7 games due to the PCL tear that he had. And he missed some playoff games for Green Bay as well. So I'd be a little concerned with that. I mean, are his best days behind him? That would be my question. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler in 2020 and 2022. But, is he still that player? With that, I think a team is going to, take a flyer on him, right? And when I say take a flyer, I think you got to consider, a deal that makes sense, like a deal that makes him of value where it's low risk, potential high reward, like the Bryce Huff acquisition that the 49ers made. If they can swing something like that for Jair Alexander, if he's willing to do something like that, then hey, why not, right? Yeah. But I just don't see that happening. And if not, like it's kind of similar, Weston, to the Joey Bosa thing, right? Like a successful player in his time. Injuries have kind of riddled his career. I would say Jair Alexander, not quite as injury riddled. It's really just been these last 2 years, but I don't think we can ignore those last 2 years and just, the lack of impact that he's had for this Packers defense, so much so that they feel comfortable, parting ways with him. So I'll also add that the 49ers, I feel pretty good about this group of corners that they have, right? And I think that can't really be overstated. Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, those are your top 2 corners right there. And based on the way Renardo Green played last year, his rookie year, I feel pretty good about it. Now, you never really know what's going to happen, especially for these young players. Does he have a setback second year, just like we saw from Jair Brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was Jair Brown's second year a result of the coaching more so than just like a lapse in his play? I don't know, but you hope Renardo Green is going to take a next step towards progression rather than regressing like we saw from Jair Brown. So based on that, if I'm assuming that Renardo Green does take a next step, I feel good about those top 2 corners. Then you got Trey Brown, veteran corner the 49ers added, who could potentially maybe be that third corner, but you also got Upton Stout, Siren Neal, who could also be a nickel guy. Then you got some, depth guys, right?
Yep.
But if we're just looking at the top cornerbacks on this roster, I feel pretty good about this group. Again, if Jair Alexander is willing to join in a deal that makes sense where, he fits into the puzzle of this defense and it, you don't have to strain your cap too much to make it happen, then I'm open to it. I just don't see it happening.
I don't see it happening either. I think it's a simple listen. Yes, you might feel comfortable with what's on the screen. I think you'd feel even more comfortable if Jair Alexander's name was up there, right? I think because with Jair, you get to use Diamador as your chess piece, right? You move him around to follow the best player, put him in the slot, put him outside because he is, right? He is your best corner out there. He's been for quite some time. But I think it's a quick check the box conversation with Jair. Don't forget that this guy was set to make in base salary over $16 million this year, right? So that's a hefty payday that he was expecting to come his way. And it's a simple question. Do you want to be part of writing a ship and going to compete and being a part, or do you need to go get the bag? Because somebody will still give you a bag. Like there's 32 teams in this league. You were only cut by one of them. Somebody's going to take a flyer on you. You can go play in Jacksonville tomorrow, and I'm sure they gladly pay you $15-16 million a year because that's what they do. So just where's your mindset at? But yes, like in terms of what's on the roster right now, like got to feel pretty good about it. You got to feel good what you saw from Renardo. We know what you're getting from Demo. And then, is Stout going to, take a leap in his rookie year? I know a lot of people are high on Robinson right now. Feel like he was an undrafted like steal, a guy who's just like sticky in coverage. Maybe he plays his way onto the field in camp. You don't know. But I think it's a very simple conversation with Jair Alexander's people. Does he need to get paid, or does he want to take a flyer for the year, be part of turning it around, and see what awaits him in free agency after the season? And I just think it's going to be more about the money, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. Just based on, again, the age.
Yep.
Just like it was for Joey Bosa,
yep.
The example I gave a little bit ago is like there was a team willing to pay him, a decent amount more than I'd be willing to pay him, or the 49ers obviously willing to pay him. I could see something similar happening for Jair Alexander. But as far as like, if the 49ers are wanting to dip their toes into the cornerback market, there are still some options out there that they can pursue, before training camp, around training camp, right? Which could be values, going into, the season. Asante Samuel Jr. is one of those guys, kind of similar where like, has dealt with injuries in his career, but maybe a team takes a flyer on him and he can at worst be a depth piece, like it
Yep.
just could be one of those moves. Russell Douglas, Mike Hilton, Stephon Gilmore. So there's guys that, if you just want to add a body to the room, there's bodies out there, okay?
For sure.
And you can find them a little later in the off season. But yeah, Jair Alexander, I think, maybe we'll probably have some other suitors, and I don't really care for the 49ers throwing a bag at him.
No. Russell Douglas is the interesting one to me. I know he's a little bit older than some of these guys, but I feel like he's just balled wherever he's been and been like an unsung hero, whether it was in Philly, Green Bay, whether it was in Buffalo. He's had, he's made his way around the league, but he still seems to pop on tape. But I'm not even worried about this until you're closer to camp at this point, in terms of all right, what does the head count look like? What does the body count look like? Who do we need to bring in? As of June 9th, I'm waiting to see who of these players is available come July 20th,
Right. And just this one last comment here from Benali on this. Depends on how worried the team is of Renardo Green's reportedly rough OTAs. So yeah, we are going to dabble into OTAs talk today, since I didn't have my show on Friday. So we'll talk about the reports from last week. As far as what I've heard on Renardo Green, based on reports, he's been targeted a lot, and it seems like sometimes, maybe most of the time, those end up being completed. But I won't worry too much about Renardo Green right now, just because it is OTAs. If there is anything new that you're trying out, you do it around this time. Sometimes coaches specifically will tell players, try this out in practice, and that's when you're wanting to take on new coaching and things like that, and making tweaks to your game. And sometimes you have a rough day trying to do that. I'm not saying that's happening, but I'm also just saying it's a possibility. So I don't want to, jump the gun on Renardo Green and assume he's going to have a rough second year. Don't want to put that out into the universe either, Weston.
No.
But yeah, I think we'll know how the 49ers feel about Renardo Green and how confident they feel about this cornerback room. Again, if they do make a move for any one of these corners that are still out there on the market, within the next month or two.
Yeah. I'm like you, Steph. I don't worry too much about the reports coming out in OTAs. For me, it's more about OTAs are a exercise in accountability. Who's going to be there? Who's got the right mindset? Just a reminder, these guys are in shorts and helmets, and very rarely are any of them, especially the ones that know they're making this football team, are going 100% out there. It's about going through the motions. Hey, new defensive coordinator, new alignments, new responsibilities, new things that need to be learned. And those things take time. That's why OTAs exist. You know what I mean? No Super Bowl is won and no Super Bowl is lost during OTAs, is so long as your team is there, right? Present and accounted for. I have some concerns about maybe Ricky Pearsall not being on the field and things of that nature that you're hearing from OTAs. Don't like that to start a season. But if you're out there, I'm not terribly worried about you, because you're not, just the same way I wouldn't read into someone who looks super, if they were to be Brock Purdy looks so sharp during OTAs. I don't care, that's not real life.
Against 7-on-7s, I would hope so. All right.
Against rookie D-backs, right, that are lining up against them in camp, So.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into OTAs, shall we? And again, a lot of the updates that we're giving are some of the ones from last week in the session that was open to the media on, I believe it was Wednesday. And so, Nick Wagner just kind of gives a attendance report of who was there, who wasn't, and who was working on the side. So, a number of veterans kind of just working off to the side. It's a maybe off day for them, including Nick Bosa, Juwan Jennings. He was working with a trainer, Jennings was, so not sure if he's dealing with something, but if he is, doesn't seem like it's serious at all. Malik Mustafa, of course, still coming back from an injury. Fred Warner, I don't think he's really participated much in OTAs at all, but he's there. And Michael Williams, I think, is like the new one too. That's was working off to the side last week. He was with the trainer. Doesn't seem like what he's dealing with is serious. So again, like OTAs is that time where if you're nicked and bruised, you're not participating because there's no reason to, to risk you out there. And in any way, it's probably more valuable for, the newer guys, anyone who's joining the team, whether they're a rookie or veteran joining the team in free agency. But yeah, sometimes even those guys get nicked and bruised. So you keep them out. And yeah, Ricky Pearsall still not out there. Brandon Ayuk, of course, not out there. Yetra Gross Matos, Alfred Collins, not out there. So tracking a few things here, and we'll see who's out there this week, but nothing to be worried about, in my opinion, at this point in time. It's June. But hey, who was out there was Trent Williams. And right. That isn't that nice. That's a sight for sore eyes. Trent Williams back out there with the offensive line group. And it seemed like he was taking part in the sessions here, as we're seeing in this video. He didn't participate in team activities. That's okay, Trent. That's all right. We don't need you in those team activities, at least not yet. So I'm okay with that. And it seems that Spencer Burford was first in line to fill in at left tackle. So he's getting some work in there in the meantime. But this is, pretty notable for the 49ers to have Trent back.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Steph, we're what, 2 weeks removed from me being nervous about him not being there?
Yeah,
with the report
I didn't forget
that he was there, but then nobody actually really saw him. But how do you miss Trent Williams walking down a hallway or down a field? He's not a little man. And notable just for the mere fact that Trent is a Hall of Fame football player. He's been in this league for an extended period of time. He doesn't traditionally participate in OTAs, right? Last year, he was non-existent at camp. And so my concern was, okay, another year older, right? And he's been paid, contract was restructured, everything that he and his family went through last season, when is enough? And sometimes enough becomes enough, and we hear about it when the other shoe drops, you know what I mean? We don't have the inside track to what Trent's been thinking about, what he's sounding out with his family, how he's communicating with coaches. So the mere fact that he's here, big win. The other big win for me that Trent's here is, it's going to sound crazy, he looks fit. You know what I mean? He looks like he is in shape. And that, hey, all signs point north, right? When you're all-pro left tackle is here on time, participating, and looks ready to go, not showing up to your building 3 days before the opening game and worrying about if he's even going to play week 1.
He does look a little slimmer, right? Yeah. And I think that's good because
it's hard to call a 340-pound man slim in any capacity, but he does look fit.
Fit, and that's the thing, right? You could be over 300 pounds and still be fit. That's what Trent looks like right now. And we know it's a big difference from what we saw last year, in which, as you mentioned, coming in at the 11th hour, pretty much before week 1, and just not being in the greatest shape of his life. It's the opposite of being in the best shape of your life for him. It was, we hadn't seen him like that. So I think that impacted him, probably impacted, his ankle at the end of the day. Here's a quote from Chris Forrester, 49ers offensive line coach. He spoke with the media last week. He said, quote, "We like our group," talking about the offensive line. "I like that we have some competition, especially at the left guard spot. I want to see how Jake Brendel will improve off of last year, and we all need to improve. And we have spent a lot of time grinding this offseason," end quote. I completely agree with this. I mean, obviously, having Trent back is huge. Competition at the left guard spot is huge. We've talked about it, that left guard spot with Aaron Banks, there were moments, it left much to be desired. So having someone, and I believe as of right now, it seems like Ben Barch is kind of the top dog there. Of course, it's June. There's a lot of time. A lot of things could happen, but competition and pressure breeds diamonds, right? So we'll see who comes out strong out of that competition. But look, the bar's not very high as to like improving the left guard spot, quite honestly. I think when we're talking about Jake Brendel, that's the interesting one. I think the bar is also pretty low there because, based on all of our opinions, we don't feel like he had his best season. But as far as what Chris Forster might say on that, he thinks he's better than any center we've had playing here up to this point. So he had nothing but good things to say about Jake Brendel. But that's his position coach, so it's like, do you really expect him to say anything else? I mean, I thought it was interesting, Weston, that he said this, but like, if you look what he said before, it's like, I want to see how Jake Brendel will improve. Like, so I think he's, I don't know, maybe trying to be nice and not trying to tear him down too much, but I think he does know there's some improvements he can make.
I think across the line, there are certainly improvements. I think Jake Brendel's the interesting one, and because especially from the quotes from Chris Forster, where he's basically like, we don't care about your PFF grade, and like, the fans obviously have wanted some improvement from the position, but we've always speculated that the 49ers felt very comfortable with their offensive line versus what our perception was. But there, right there, fewest amount of missed assignments. It's fun, like, you see that one quote where it's like, I want to see how he improves off of. You can interpret that two different ways. Is he going to play better than he did last year because we need him to? Or is he going to continue to ascend because we thought he played exceptionally well for the position? I lean towards the latter when you see commentary like fewest amount of missed assignments. We know that Kyle Shanahan's offense asks these linemen to do different things. So there are a lot of times left on islands, you know what I mean? Like, so we only know what our eyes tell us, but we don't necessarily view the tape the same way the coaching staff is viewing the tape based on that player's performance. We're watching television, right? And it might look like Jake Brendel got beat, but the reality might have been Aaron Banks, right? Who didn't even get a hand on that guy for the center to come over and help. There's just a lot of nuance to it. But I found this to be particularly interesting to me because he's the player that we kind of poo-pooed throughout the season, right? And throughout the offseason. And I don't believe Chris Forster is not the guy that just hypes somebody up to hype somebody up. He's been doing this a long time, and he's very particular about his word choice. You know what I mean? He could have been like, hey, he had a good year. Let's keep it going. You know what I mean? But you hear things like, his pass protection was the highest grade on this team. You know what I mean? So clearly they're happy with it, and clearly they want to see it go to the next level. That's how I am choosing to interpret what I am taking away from OTA so far.
I definitely do think they're happy with it. I mean, if anything else, that's the one thing we know, that the 49ers are happy with their offensive line performance. Like, yeah, we know that. Yep. And, something that he did say is like, Forster, I mean, it's his job to grade Jake Brendel, and he also knows what he's asking him to do. So in a sense, he almost told us he's the only one that could grade him fairly. And yeah. I mean, there's truth to that. I mean, we don't have the context of everything that these offensive linemen are told to do and how they're coached on every single thing. We don't know what the play is and what their assignments are. Only Chris Forster will know that more than anyone else, right? Yep. And a few select coaches on the team as well. But, I mean, he's got a point. He's the only one that could probably grade Jake Brendel as fairly as possible, and he seems to think that Brendel's doing okay.
Just based on what they need. And I'm going to give a little more context around this. Going back to Mike Shanahan's offense, right? Like pre-Kyle in the offense that they run, the center is the most important position across the offensive line. It's not the left tackle. It's not a right tackle. It's the center, right? So you would have to imagine and think of some of the ones that Kyle has had along the way, even when he was an OC at multiple stops in Atlanta, even here in San Francisco, where they brought in Weston Richburg and other people to play the position. I think if they were super disappointed with Jake Brendel, they would have been pulled the plug and made a move, right? I'm just reading between the lines here. It's not from a lot. Like, I think they would be aggressive around that position and overpay is better than that. No, I didn't say Brendel is better than Alex Mack.
No, I think Chris Forster is kind of insinuating that with his quote that he's been better than any center we've had playing here up to this point. That is what the likes of Alex Mack, Weston Richburg having graced this team, prior. And he's saying Jake Brendel has been better than those guys.
Let's leave it at Chris Forster keeps a different scorecard than we do. Right?
Yes, we know
Let's just say it's a different scorecard, and he's looking for something entirely different. You know what I mean?
Yep. For sure. And then Benelli has this question: is whoever wins swing tackle this season the right tackle for the future? Because someone is going to pay McKivitz an obscene amount of money, and it will not be the 49ers. It definitely won't be the 49ers. And so let's see who the 49ers have at tackle as an option, at least for right tackle. Well, they have Andre Dillard, who currently listed as like a backup left tackle. Austin Pleasance could be an option for them. Sebastian Gutierrez, although I don't know if Sebastian Gutierrez does both left and right. But Austin Pleasance, Isaac Alarcon look like the two guys that can slip in there. I will say on Austin Pleasance, so Vic Taffer, who's covering the 49ers now via The Athletic, he had a piece on like the 49ers offensive line and what Chris Forster had to say. And it sounds like Austin Pleasance is coming along, and, he's kind of yelling at him and trying to, test him out a little bit and see how he does under pressure and all these things. Because that's kind of the next step. He wants to see how he performs under pressure. But so far, it seems like, the team likes him and it thinks he's doing a little better than he was last year.
I mean, I think Benali's point, and she always comes with good points and good questions, is accurate. Right? I don't believe Colton McKivitz is getting. You're going to see again. I mean, what did Moore just get signed for? Like $15-16 million, and you know what I mean? Like, it's going to happen, and especially somebody who's started as much as Colton has, he's going to get a hefty payday next year, and they're going to be fine with their 4th or 5th round comp pick after he goes. But yeah, I think I love Sebastian Gutierrez, but he just doesn't see the field ever. And he's been with the 49ers for quite some time. And the only time you really recognize Sebastian Gutierrez is when they start doing the international play, right? As a Mexican international, like Sebastian Gutierrez is, like, he's always part of the commercials. When the 49ers played down in Mexico City against the Arizona Cardinals, like, he was front and center of all that. I don't remember the last time he's played outside of preseason, right? I don't think.
No, he's kind of just along for the ride, it feels like.
Yeah.
But I've said this before, that the 49ers kind of like to develop guys in the background quietly for like years. It often takes years because, like, we often talk about the learning curve for a lot of these guys coming out of college, how tough it is to kind of just get acclimated to like playing offensive line in the NFL. And I think there are specific things and there's a specific way that they want their offensive linemen to play like. So sometimes it takes time, I guess. So I don't know. Maybe at some point we will see Gutierrez, but I don't suspect that will be this season. We'll see. He'll be in the mix next season, like we said, potentially for right tackle. But let's get to the defensive line, Weston. We got the new guy, right? We got Bryce Huff in the building. Chris Kosrick spoke with the media on Wednesday and had this to say about the addition.
I still saw a good player on tape. He had a wrist injury about mid-season that I think kind of derailed his progression within being a stand-up player. But I thought he was really coming along, and I thought, he's getting better within his role of being more of a stand-up outside linebacker. You could see the progression of getting better. And then, I think the wrist injury kind of set him back, and it's hard when you're progressing and then all of a sudden, you get an injury that kind of stunts that growth. But you still saw a good player on tape. You still saw a player that could win one-on-one. It's a little bit different than, the hand in the ground role that he played with Robert in the Jets. So, but still a good player. And, we're going to get him back to being, a little bit more with what he's comfortable with putting his hand in the ground and getting off and getting him out of a 2-point stance and back into a 3/4 point stance. And it's where he's excelled at and what he feels the most comfortable with.
So there he was talking about just what he saw from, Bryce Huff with the Eagles, and also, going into the role, right? I mean, and we've been talking about this, Weston. We talked about it last week, that the role he's going to have in San Francisco is going to align more closely with what he's best at, and yeah. That's what I'm excited up for. And we're seeing clips of him at last week's practice as well. Credit to Anthony Flores for these clips, but he looks fast. He looks good.
He looks good. He looks explosive. And I think, what I don't want anybody to lose sight of is this was a handpicked player by Robert Saleh, right? Like there was probably a handful of players across the league that Saleh wanted to keep tabs on that have had success underneath him. And I'm not surprised to hear Kasurik's rhetoric on getting them back into a 3 and 4 point stance with the hand in the ground versus standing up, which is what a lot of the edges do in Philadelphia in that Fangio defense. The reality is like, you're not going to go get a guy or make a trade for a guy to ask him to do something that you don't already know if he does well or not, right? Like, you are bringing him in with a very specific use case in mind. So this goes back to when we talked about when the trade was actually happening and we were still trying to figure out what it was going to be for. Besides that mid-round pick, this is a prudent move by the San Francisco 49ers. Go get a guy that has performed well under your new defensive coordinator, and is familiar with doing the things that he's going to be asked to do, and he's not learning a new role. He's just learning a new team. Side note, I'm boycotting ESPN as of this moment for the mere fact that I went to the 49ers depth chart just to pull something up in the corner of my eye when we were talking about the offensive lineman. And I scroll down. Who do you think they have listed as the third string left defensive end for the San Francisco 49ers?
It can't be Bryce Huff, right?
It's Nick Bosa.
What?
He is literally listed as the third string because I was going down. I was like, what? Where is Bosa? And
someone messed up.
Yeah,
the intern messed up.
Sorry, intern. Your internship's not being renewed next season.
Instructions unclear. Shout out to Edgar in the comments for dropping the super sticker. Appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, Bryce Huff. I'm really excited about this. Everyone's as Technic's saying. Everyone has kind of mentioned the role didn't fit him in Philadelphia. And in San Francisco, he's going to be doing what he's meant to do, where he's been successful. So it should be a great move for the 49ers. I mean, no doubt about that. But, man, really excited about it. Another guy we're excited about is obviously the rookie Mykel Williams. And I mentioned on Wednesday he was working off to the side, but certainly the 49ers have seen enough for him to make an impression so far. And here's Chris Kosarik again talking about Mykel Williams.
Really gravitated towards Nick a lot, and if you watch him at practice, he's always standing right behind Nick, and then Nick knows he's watching, and he's a kid that's really eager to learn, and wants to know how and why. And so Nick always is pulling him to the side and just maybe give him small minute pointers on what he could maybe do a little bit better with his stance, first step, hand placement, things like that. I think it's a good match. You got an older, shouldn't even say old, you got a veteran player in Nick going on the 7th year with a rookie that's like a sponge right now and wants to learn from one of the best in the game. It's a good matchup.
Yeah, and Nick Bosa also spoke with the media and just, gave his 2 cents on Michael.
Seen a lot of talent, a lot of eagerness to learn, more so than I've seen probably from any young guy. He's just wants to learn as much as he can, and I'm excited to give all the knowledge I can to him. And I think he's got a ton of talent, so sky's the limit.
Nick's so funny because like going from like one interview to the other, like Nick is just so he's just so quiet in comparison, but
I,
gotta
I,
love
I,
him.
I love it, and obviously you get to have so much fun with this beyond anybody else, but like it's just so monotone. It's so like, I don't want to use the word stoner, but that's like what it kind of comes across as times. It's almost like I was making fun of my son the other day because he'll be like on the phone with his grandma and he'll be like, "Hi." And I make fun of him like, "Hi, Bert." Have you ever Chappelle skit when he's talking about Snuffleupagus and Sesame Street? Neither here nor there, but that's what it reminds me of. So that's why I chuckle. But hey, to the matter at hand here around Michael Williams, I mean, that's high praise from your position coach. That's high praise from the guy that you're going to be learning from and even lining up alongside of from time to time. So checks all the boxes. He's available in terms of OTAs being there. You're hearing that he wants to be a sponge and he's just mimicking what success looks like in the league and trying to learn from somebody who's been hyper successful at the same position in this very same defense. What's not to like about that? Now what remains to be seen is the translation, once the lights are on and it's game time. But you watch the kid play at Georgia, and now he's getting, NFL coaching. He's getting to learn from one of the best in the league. There's no indication whatsoever that the lights will go out, once it's the biggest stage. So, yeah, I love the reports that are coming out about Michael Williams, especially for somebody that you chose with the 11th pick overall. And what did we say? The first round pick has to play, has to contribute, cannot be a project.
Right.
And he's kind of checking all those boxes along the way.
He definitely is. I was very excited to learn about just like the eagerness, right? Asking a million questions to Bosa, just taking everything in, being a sponge, as Chris Kosarick, described him as. I think that's perfect. That's what you want out of a rookie, and certainly a first-round pick, as we're saying here. Excited for the role he's going to have with this team. A couple other things that Nick Bosa mentioned that I thought were kind of notable. For one, I don't think he was talking about Michael, but he did say it's not football yet. Yeah. So, and then he went on to talk about, the said player. I don't remember if it was Michael, but that just goes to say that it's not football yet. It's OTAs, kind of what we've been saying this whole time. When these guys actually get into team periods, and I know they have team periods and OTAs as well, but it's just not the same. It's not the same intensity. There's only so much that you can do as far as the, helmets bumping and things like that. But once we do get into real, game action and simulating, actual gameplay, then that's when we'll have a better idea of who a lot of these guys are. But, the early returns on some of these guys certainly are encouraging. And another thing that Nick Bosa said was that as far as the rookies, we'll talk about the rookies as a whole, is that, they don't really seem like rookies, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but they don't really seem like rookies because when, Chris Kosarick or, the coaches call on them in practice, or sorry, in meetings, they know their stuff. They're on top of it. And I think that's another good sign as well. Just to stand out to Nick Bosa and for him to say these little things, I think is a good thing.
A man who doesn't say many things, for him to have those very intricate details to share, positive signs.
Indeed. So,
hi, Bert.
So I'm encouraged by the rookies. And yeah, always great to hear from the man himself, Nick Bosa. But Brock Purdy also spoke with the media last week, and he spoke about a number of different things. And this was the first time we got to hear from and about Mick Lombardi a little bit more. And, Brock Purdy was asked about him. So I wanted to share what he had to say.
Mick's been awesome, just extremely competitive and just fiery in everything that he does. And, for us in the quarterback room, a lot of times it's about, making the right decisions and that kind of thing. But the way that he runs meetings and stuff, he's just on fire all the time. And when we get out in the field, you feel it too. And so it's been good, man. We love, obviously, just where he's been throughout his career, New England and coming here. And it's just been really special, honestly, just picking his brain and how he coaches, man. We all love him and excited to, go to battle with him this year. So
what kind of
Yeah, so I mean, obviously with a new quarterback coach, we don't really know what to expect, right? Like Brian Griese, I thought did a pretty good job with both Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. And Purdy also talked about, one of the things that Griese did so well is just kind of being able to relate to the player because of the experience that Griese had in being a quarterback and actual like game situations is kind of what Purdy was talking about. That was really valuable to him, situational football and kind of coaching him up in game moments. So I guess like that is to be seen what Mick Lombardi is going to bring to the table. But, obviously Purdy so far is good first impressions on him. And hopefully he has as much and maybe even more impact than Brian Griese had for these crop of quarterbacks that the 49ers have, including Purdy.
I think my favorite thing that Brock said there was just like referring to Lombardi as fiery, right? You like feeling his energy and that translates out on the field because we'll all agree to this. What did the 49ers miss the most on both sides of the ball last year? Everything was just flat. Nothing was fiery. Nothing was, playing at 1,000 miles an hour. It just always felt flat. And yes, I think we all were going to miss Brian Griese because we saw the success he was able to have. I mean, he checked so many boxes, playing the position at a pretty high level, playing for Shanahan while playing the position, right? Like you just was so many things on that you loved about it. But I'll take it as long as Mick is in there digesting this playbook and understanding this playbook, translating to his quarterback. But if he's got them fired up and hyped, that's kind of all I'm looking for. You know what I mean? It's just to come out, pump. Like Brock's a fiery guy. You know what I mean? The one thing that I'll say about Brock is he's like the quintessential gamer, like feel like he wants the ball in his hands. He wants to do that. Like he's got a little chip on his shoulder, a little bit, as the kids say, a little bit of dog in him. I want a coordinator or a position coach that matches that intensity level, if not exceed that intensity level. And it sounds like he does. So makes me happy so far, but don't know a ton about like Mick Lombardi as a whole to say this is a drastic improvement over Brian Griese. Right. That's just kind of what I'm looking for out of the position.
And the truth is we probably won't know, at least to the extent that us fans can possibly know until we get into the season and he's coaching them up in game situations and, week to week, what are the improvements that we're seeing from Brock, right? Things like that, nuanced coaching. But so far it feels like a good pairing. And I agree. Like one thing that I'll say about the 49ers, just the assistant coaches that they brought in this year, there is a bit of a theme in that they are very vocal coaches, right? You think about Gus Bradley, like he's a very like, I don't know, just sort of fun kind of guy. Like he has a lot of energy. Like you can see it when he talks and he spoke with the media last week as well. And so he's kind of fiery himself. And that's obviously a great compliment to Robert Saleh, also the most fiery coach that they've maybe had. And then, with Mick Lombardi, if he brings a little bit of that to the table as well. I didn't really get the sense that Brian Griese was, a super high energy guy. And so maybe that's something that Mick Lombardi could bring to the table. But I'm going to play a clip from Mick because he was asked, what is the next step for Brock Purdy? So I'll play that here.
I think just overall, just taking it day by day.
and not trying to win the year, not trying to win the game that's, in September, but trying to win the meeting, trying to win the practice, and taking every single little rep and saying, okay, how can I make sure this little rep's good? How can I make sure that I can learn from this little rep, and moving forward from there? And that's a very cliche statement to say, Matt, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, that's really what it is. He's got to take it one step at a time as opposed to 5 steps all at once. If you try and tackle 5 things, you're not going to accomplish none of them. So how can we accomplish one thing today and then accomplish the next thing tomorrow?
And he as a follow-up, he was kind of asked about, like, did he feel like Brock Purdy was doing too much or trying to do too much last year, which I think is a natural question. Like, I immediately had the same thought as well, because I think we've also thought the same about Brock's season last year. And, Purdy himself has talked about his season and how he kind of just wants to get back to fundamentals, which almost tells me the same thing. Like, he knows as well, like, he was trying to do too much. So Mick didn't exactly want to say that, but I could tell, like, maybe there is some of that, and certainly this answer from him in kind of just saying what's the next step. Like, I think just trying not to make the moment too big, and again, like, try not to do too much and just do what you're asked. And it's worked for Purdy in the past, so I think that's a good first step, and it's good for Mick to kind of recognize that, and of course for Purdy to understand that as well.
I love Mick's philosophy. It's something that just resonates with me tremendously. It's something I talk about in, like, my line of work all the time, about controlling the controllables, right? Like, stop focusing on the outcomes and focus more on the inputs that you're doing day to day. Win the day. What does winning the day look like today? Maybe it looks like improving footwork, or practicing repetition around a throw outside the numbers that you might struggle with. Whatever it is, check those boxes along the way, and I promise the results will be there. If you are solely focused on the result, you're never going to do, because if you're solely focused on winning a Super Bowl, you're never going to win the Super Bowl, because that's all you're thinking about every single day. And you want to do it, you want to win it in June, and you can't win it in June. So what can you do from June through August to prepare for when the lights come on week 1 against Seattle on the road, right? Like a divisional home opener, or a divisional opener. I just like that philosophy, because I'm sure, Steph, if we went back and listened to our Monday shows throughout the year last year, we probably on more than one occasion talked about Brock doing too much. We talked openly about Fred Warner overcompensating for the lack of the defense. This happens. And you kind of want that to happen, because it shows you the type of player and the type of person that they are. But things become a lot easier when you just focus on what you need to do to be better. And then we'll carry that same mentality with the other players. You focus on you. When Brock was his best, it was just trusting the offense, trusting, they talk about how he can't see over the lineman, and he tell you how he's throwing blind. He's throwing to a window. That's the way it's designed. When you're trying to overcompensate and do too much, you're trying to throw to a player. You're trying to fit it in when you have no business trying to fit it in. And that's when mistakes happen and games change on a dime from a pick six, or a 14-point swing where you're about to go into their end zone. They pick it, and then they drive down the field and score on you. Like, that changes games. And I think Brock's in his best. I don't want to say when he's reactionary, but when he's trust your fundamentals, trust the game plan, trust the play call. And then if it breaks down, go do what you do pretty well, Brock. You know what I mean? Like, buy a little bit of time, scramble, etc. You don't have to go win the Super Bowl. We will go win the Super Bowl. And I appreciated that clip from Mick, because it's something that I talk about so much, like with colleagues and new hires that I might train, things of that nature. Is like, stop worrying about what the end of the year looks like. It's the beginning of the year. Like, what do we do day to day, week to week, month to month to stack wins to get there? So I love that. And I can probably go another hour just talking about
I love that. I love that comparison, actually, because I do feel like obviously there are parallels, and it makes sense why, Brock maybe felt like he had a lot on his shoulders last year. His last season before this big contract, for example, coming off of a Super Bowl loss, for example, like, you want to correct all those things, and I'm sure you want to correct them all immediately. And like in that very moment, but like it's a process, or all these little things, all these steps you got to take. So I'm Yeah, I think it's good that it seems like they're on the same page as to what Brock needs to do to be better. And I feel good about them being able to do that and getting back to the basics. But, another thing that, Mick did acknowledge is that, hey, there's a lot of factors as to, why Brock had the year that he had last year and why, sometimes some plays break down, some guys just not getting open, the timing of everything maybe being off. Well, the receivers, of course, are a huge part of Brock Purdy's success as well. And, one thing that we continue to hear is Jacob Cowing, 49ers second-year receiver, having a strong offseason. Here's what Brock Purdy had to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, they came down to Jacksonville when we were training over there, and just working on the little details of routes and timing and where they're supposed to be, when they can expect the ball out of the breaks on certain routes. Obviously, that's such a huge thing with quarterbacks and receivers, and so I think starting that pretty early in the offseason, and then we translate that all the way over here to OTAs. We've definitely seen that, and I think Cowing's had great OTAs so far, and getting in and out of cuts and being the first one to lead lines and show guys how routes are supposed to be ran. So he's taking a huge leap there, man. So really excited for him and his development, and so excited to keep throwing to him.
So we did start off talking about both Pearsall and Cowing, doing some training out there in Jacksonville with him together, and Mac Jones as well, and just having that off-season time to work. But obviously, Cowing's been grinding on his own, and it's been paying off for him. So I'm excited to see what Cowing does in his second year. You look at this wide receiver room, you look at Brandon Ayuk possibly, maybe missing the first half of the season, Demarcus Robinson, I don't know if he's going to be suspended. Like, these second-year guys have to step up. So Jacob Cowing looking good. And again, it's OTAs. We'll see how it looks in preseason, training camp, and all that, and going into the season. But this is encouraging.
I can't disagree. I mean, we saw glimpses of what Jacob could potentially be during the preseason last year. We saw brain farts out on the field, wrong routes, misalignment. We saw it all, like everything that you expect to see from a rookie. And we also know that Kyle Shanahan tends to put his rookie wide receivers in the doghouse and not give them a fair shake outside of Ricky Pearsall being forced into action and being a first-round pick with the Ayuk injury. Stretches of ineffectiveness from Deebo Samuel and others, right? I'm not putting that all on Deebo by any means, but I'm excited for the kid. I hope it translates. Guys, just always remember, this is OTA speak. What does that mean? Everything is rainbows and sunshine until we actually get on the field and face another opponent, not your own team. But, Steph, this just brings me back to the vibes portion of the conversation. The vibes are high. These guys are loving each other. They're propping each other up. You know what I mean? Right, wrong, or indifferent. That didn't exist last offseason. Last offseason felt like it was just drag through the mud. When's camp? You know what I mean? Let's get into the season.
Everyone getting asked about contract negotiations, other people's contract negotiations. Yeah.
It's just, again, I'm going to go and rest solely on the vibes. And this team, a lot of sports teams are vibe teams, right? Like, the vibes got to be right, and you see that carry through. But back to Jacob Cowing. Yeah, I hope so, because there are things that I think you can do with him in Kyle Shanahan's offense. What was the talk all last year? Shanahan's offense is figured out, right? Like, it was figured out. Okay. You put some different players and some different wrinkles, what's figured out? Absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm hoping, that the little bit of element that, do I expect Jacob Cowing to go out there and catch 10 touchdowns and go for 1,200 yards and grab 75 to 80 balls? No, I do not. You know what I mean? But I hope, because we barely saw him last year. Like, we barely saw him during the regular season. Like, I need to see more of that guy prove that he can't play this game versus just telling us he can't, or showing us that he might not be what you thought by not putting him out on the football field. So love that the arrows seem to be pointing up. Love the praise from the quarterback. Love that he's even putting in the offseason work with That's all voluntary as well. But he said, I want to play ball. I want to be on the field. This is the easiest way to do that for me.
And usually when these guys get, thrown into the doghouse, is because of some playbook thing, right? Like they're not as deep in the playbook as Kyle Shanahan would like them to be, especially in the rookie year. Like that, I think that's the biggest hurdle for these guys, right? And so now going into his second year, I think that's probably another element that he wants to be able to prove. And so hopefully he can. Now for a rookie this year, he might be on a similar path. Jordan Watkins, wide receiver from Ole Miss. Brock Purdy was asked about him as well, because there's been some rumblings that he's looking really good out there. Here's what Brock had to say.
Yeah, he's balling, man. Jordan Watkins has been balling from day one. Really, he's come in and has done everything pretty right, and he's been on point. He's had a lot of explosive plays down the field, and obviously the short game, the intermediate. He's making plays all around. So I'm excited for him. Obviously, we know it's a process throughout this whole thing, from OTAs to the 40 days away to camp, and I know he knows that. But man, I'm really excited to keep working with him and for him to keep learning our offense and how we do things. And but definitely a rookie that has popped out in front of everybody.
Again, like also encouraging. And the reason, Weston, that I'm going to choose to think this is little more than just like QB speak propping up his receivers is because of the verb or the adjective, I guess. Or, you know what? I just give up on English. Him saying he's balling, like he didn't have to use that term. Sometimes
it's an adverb.
Adverb.
In
okay.
the English language.
Thank you. It's been a long time since grade school, man. But yeah, I mean, for him to use that word, usually you can kind of suss out when it's just like the regular speak and it's very cliche, but like say, man, he's balling. Like that's something you'd probably say in literally any conversation, whether he was asked by his friend or the media. You know what I mean? Like I think it's very genuine. So Jordan Watkins making quite the impression, not just on Purdy, but, beat writers have been saying similar things on Watkins, that he looks good. I just hope to God he gets into that playbook, man, because I don't want to see this guy turn into a doghouse rookie season, just like all the other wide receivers that have come through here. There has to be one guy that breaks through.
It has to. This is where I temper my expectations again. Like I was just saying, hey, I hope this prop up bodes well for Cowing and his opportunities on the field. Hard for me to subscribe to that. A rookie is going to wide receiver that is not a first round pick wide receiver is going to get the opportunity that we're hoping for, because we've never seen it. But I'll say this. I agree with you on the choice of words by Brock, and really agreeing in the sense that like that's a term that you would use to anybody, which means that just like came out. That's the truth. You know what I mean? That's not a thought response or a thought answer. It's just literally how Brock is seeing it and what he's interpreting based on his play at this point in time. I'll just say, everything we thought we knew about the 49ers has changed this year, right? So why this could change as well, in the sense of like, hey, could a rookie break through? I would love for that to happen. And I hope he is what they are all talking about, because that would bode so well for this offense to grab a guy, mid rounds of the draft, as somebody that can just like storm onto scene. Especially just given the uncertainty of the position right now. Like Pearsall with a hammy, how long is that going to linger? When does Ayuk come back? DeMarcus Robinson, suspended, not suspended? Then there's just a lot of question marks outside of third and Jawan, going down the line.
It's a crowded room, as we've said here on the show before, but is it deep? Like that is the question. Like how much value do these guys really bring? Like we don't really know for some of these guys. There's a lot of question marks. I will add Brock Purdy did say some complimentary things about Demarcus Robinson as well. Seems like they're building a good rapport, good connection there too. That'll be important. He talks about his veteran presence. That will definitely be needed, especially while Brandon Ayuk is out. I have called Demarcus Robinson kind of like the new Chris Conley for this team. By the way, Chris Conley retiring. Congratulations and best of luck to him. But I think he's kind of that replacement of the veteran presence, and there's a lot of young guys on this team. And I know, Leonard Hankerson, the 49ers wide receiver coach, has kind of been pushing Brandon Ayuk to be that veteran presence for these guys as well, especially since, Ayuk is a little limited in what he could do right now. He could be a bit of a teacher for these guys and a good example for these guys. So I know that's something that Hankerson is wanting him to do, but all that to say, like, there's some guys who are, maybe trying to break through here. Cowing, Watkins. We won't really know till, probably later in this offseason, if any of these guys are really going to be valuable for the 49ers, especially with Ayuk, missing the first half of the season. Leon Sandcastle in the comments poses this question. He read that the Patriots are considering trading Kendrick Bourne to San Francisco. Would you give a 7th round pick for Kendrick Bourne?
No, I would not. Listen, I love KB. A lot of fun, a lot of excitement. It's a different team. It's a different offense. It's a different flavor. I'm never a fan of retread, Steph. I've said that. That was my skepticism around bringing Robert Saleh back, is I'm just not a fan of them in general. But I just don't think you have to trade for Kendrick Bourne. And I think there are other players just like him around the league that you can go get for less.
You already got Juwan Jennings. I mean, that is
that falls behind him. Let's just call it what it is. Hey, if they cut him, okay. But I'm not giving any piece of collateral up for Kendrick Bourne.
I think that's fair. And this could be one of those scenarios where, a team obviously wants to trade a player, but they see if there's anyone willing to bite.
Yeah, of course.
If there isn't anyone, the team may ultimately just end up cutting him anyway. And in that case, why not? But I'm okay without Bourne either. I know, like I said, we do have questions about this wide receiver room, mostly like who is going to be the person who steps up. So I wouldn't scoff at the idea of Bourne returning, but I don't know. I want to see these younger guys. And I think Kendrick Bourne potentially pushes Jacob Cowing, Jordan Watkins, some of these younger receivers down the depth chart where you're not going to see those guys on the field. I want to see them. I want to see how they can contribute, how they can grow and learn on the fly. They're only going to do that by getting these opportunities on the field. So that would be my thought.
You don't have Super Bowl expectations this year. You don't, right? Like, let's just call it what it is based off of last season. Like, you need to find out what you have in the stable, and you need to find out right now, because next year is another year where you have a boatload of picks in the offseason, and where you're going to allocate them based on who's played well, who's not. You have intentionally, I read this stat, what was it? 36 players under the age of 24 on this roster right now. Something like that, right? You've intentionally made that decision. Well, you know what? I want to see all of them play. Every single one of them. You know what I mean? I do. You need to know what you have. Like that you intentionally trim the fat around the aging players, the non-performing players, to go get a lot of unknowns. Well, let's find out what we do know, or what we should know. And again, no knock on KB. I just don't think I'm giving up something for somebody that probably doesn't fit the direction that we're going anyway. I'm not giving up I know it's a 7th round pick. I'm not giving that up for somebody who's probably a stopgap for a handful of weeks till someone returns from injury or somebody returns from, you know what I mean? Like, and there's nothing intimidating about Kendrick Bourne to the defenders on the other side. That's like changing the guard of oh, their number one corner is following KB around the field. No, they're not. No, they're not. No,
I
they're
mean,
not.
if we want to go down that route, Keenan Allen's a free agent still.
That's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean? Like,
if you want a
veteran older.
difference maker,
Yeah.
there are other players out there that you don't
Yeah.
even have to give anything up for. Just go
Yeah.
sign to a 1-year flyer,
For sure. Yeah, I mean, so the 49ers can add some guys like we've been saying. I have no doubt they'll probably add 1 or 2 players in the lead up to training camp. That first week of training camp, probably you'll see someone getting signed, and it'll be one of these like veterans, free agents who have been out there like this whole time. They're gonna sign them off the street. It could end up being like a good value add for them when all is said and done. So that's what I'm waiting on. But yeah, I'm not like exactly clamoring over the likes of Kendrick Bourne or even Jair Alexander, who we spoke about earlier in the show. Now, Weston, we talked about OTAs from last week. Now we're getting into mandatory mini camp. That will be open to the media starting tomorrow. So we'll get some reports out of that. And then also on Wednesday. So make sure you guys tune in. I'll see if Bully Ball will be on live tomorrow with me and Jay, and then Wednesday I'll be going live to recap that practice. Kyle Shanahan and some players will speak with the media on Tuesday, as well as on Wednesday we'll also hear from Robert Saleh on Wednesday. So keep it locked here on the channel. Again, sorry I didn't do a show on Friday. I was feeling under the weather, feeling better now, and happy to be back on here with my guy Weston. Happy to be here with all of you. Make sure you guys like this video if you haven't yet. Subscribe to the channel, not just mine, but Weston's as well, Island49. Appreciate all of you. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, folks, have a good Monday. Talk to y'all tomorrow. Peace.